Hey guys, Kelfezond here. I know I was meant to be showing you Leonard and Penny today, but things change and couldn't be bothered, to be honest, because they're quite fast. So I've decided to come up with a new video here. I spoke to a chap today, a lad on one of the forums. His name's Nate, and he made a thread about trying to convince his mum to allow him to get a snake. And I thought, this is a great idea to do a video to put across points to people and kind of rectify things about how snakes are viewed and how keeping them is, because there's a lot of misinformation. We did a brief search on the internet to find some things like this that are already out there, and whilst there are some good ones there, the vast majority of them tend to be pointed one way or the other, basically saying snakes are huge, they're dangerous, you don't want one, they make terrible pets, or on the opposite side saying yes, they're great, go out and buy a Burmese python, which obviously nobody really wants to do. Well, some people did. I wanted to, but I didn't. So anyway, I'm going to go over some basic points here, some pros and cons to keeping snakes. I've got some notes down here, that's why I keep randomly looking at my leg, so just ignore that, just pretend that I'm not doing it. The first thing I'm going to go over is the food, which is what most people who aren't into reptiles disagree with straight away. My girlfriend behind the camera there, she was completely against the idea of having frozen rodents in our freezer. Now there's a couple of ways of getting around this. Firstly, nice way of doing it, a lot of people will keep their frozen reptile food inside, like say a lunchbox or something like that, inside the freezer to completely separate it from anything that you might want to eat, which is fair enough. Other people like myself, I have a separate freezer for my snakes, but obviously I have tons of snakes, so I need a lot of food. If you live close to a reptile store or somewhere that sells frozen rats or mice or whatever you need for your snake, then you don't really have to keep any in your freezer at all. You can just go along and buy some food whenever you need it. I mean, snakes only eat once a week most of the time when they grow up, sometimes even once every 2 weeks, so you can just collect food as and when you need it if you live close enough to a store, which most people don't. I do, which is nice, but still. Anyway, that's pretty much food. The other thing is the price of food. Now a lot of people think you can't afford to have, especially if it's like a second pet. If you already have a pet, I'm not going to be able to afford to feed 2 pets. This is where you're completely wrong, because it's so cheap for snake food. It starts to cost a lot if you have a lot of snakes, like I do, but then you can also get around that by bulk buying, which is a really good way of doing it. You probably need your own freezer, but you could buy, say, 100 rats, keep them in the freezer, and you'd be paying tiny amounts of money per rat. But in terms of just one food, 1 week, one snake, it's a pittance. It's less than £1 for a rat, so you're pretty easy on the price range there. I'm going to show you a snake that I've got out. He was meant to come out at the start of this talk, but I forgot. This is my oldest one that I got. His name's Diablo. He's a royal python. He's absolutely gorgeous, and he's my friendliest snake that I have. Now, I'm not going to lie, like a lot of these guides do, and say that all pet snakes are fantastic and they can all make these wonderful bonds and stuff like that. Truth of the matter, in my opinion, is that they don't really make bonds per se, but they can get more friendly with handling. Personally, I've had one who was just down there, you can't see him, but his name's Anubis. He was incredibly aggressive for a few weeks, worked with him for a while, and now he's just like Diablo, really. But obviously it was your first snake, you're going to want something tame, so my advice would be to look carefully when you're trying to buy your first snake. Make sure you hold before you buy, never buy something straight away. Hello, Diablo. Hello. Soft as a kitten. In more ways than one. A lot of people think they're slimy. Not slimy at all. They're very smooth, kind of like, what's the best example? Kind of like a sofa, if that makes sense. Like, leather. It's kind of nice, soft feel. Hello. Anyway, as I was saying, yeah. Another thing I'm going to go back to, I know that my friend Nate, who inspired this video, he's already got some pets, and a lot of people think it's a lot to take on a whole nother pet, but it's nothing like a cat or a dog. It's if I had to like it like anything, it's more like a plant. Snakes, firstly, they don't crave human attention, so You know, if you're busy one day and you can't find the time to take him out, that's fine. I haven't had Diablo for probably about 4 or 5 days now. In fact, they prefer it that way. They like having their own space. Don't you? Yes, you do. See, he says he does, but you can't really hear him from all the way over there. So they're so easy to maintain as well. I mean, these guys. When I had one snake, it was less than 5 minutes a day for that animal, unless I wanted to handle him and show him off basically, or take some pictures or do all the fun stuff. But basically, what you're doing is obviously you can keep them in something like this. This is a plastic rub. Or you can keep them in a glass vivarium, which is, well, I say glass vivarium, glass-fronted vivarium. All you got to do is change the water every day, possibly every other day if it's a nice big bowl like this, and just make sure that there's no mess inside there. If there's not, you're aces. I've done it now in front of you. It was less than a minute's worth of work. So it is so easy to take care of them. And like I said, they don't need human attention. Most of them are perfectly fine with human attention. Like Diablo here. He's awesome. Which is another reason I always think they're great pets for kids, because firstly they're harmless, and a lot of people don't know that. In fact, the bite on one of these is less than a hamster. A hamster does a far worse bite, in my opinion. I get bitten all the time by snakes, because I have quite a few now, and some of them not so nice. And the only ones that have ever really hurt me are the real big guys, the over 6 footers. And in terms of hurting, that's literally it. It's just hurting. It doesn't do any serious damage. There's no long-lasting effects. After the bite, you're pretty much fine. Wipe off a little bit of blood, but these little guys are fine. If they bite you, it's kind of like a little cat scratch. Nothing too bad. Now, a lot of places will say, these are escape artists, which puts a lot of people off. You don't want, to lose something like this in your house and then, thinking, oh, it's going to be over me when I'm asleep, it's going to come into bed. Don't worry about that. As long as you're careful, they're not escape artists. They can get through small spaces, but then so can pretty much any other animal you keep. If you leave your garden gate open, the dog's going to get out. It doesn't make him an escape artist. I apologise for that noise. That over there is Alice, and she's a hedgehog, and she's very loud when she eats. There's another good point about keeping snakes. No noise at all, really. Well, okay, that's a lie. Some of them make noise, but not verbally. It's more like, rustling of newspaper, and that's just because I use newspaper as substrate. Which brings me on to another point. The bedding and stuff like this, obviously you are going to need to maintain it. Personally, I'll show you over here. This is lining paper. You can get this pretty much any DIY store. And this is nice and absorbent, and it doesn't look as bad as newspaper. I use it purely because it's so much easier than having to use substrate. The snakes don't mind what they get. They're pretty impartial to it. But if you have carpets like I do, then it's an absolute nightmare to get substrate out, like little wood chips and stuff like that. So with this amount of snakes, it was much easier just to use lining paper. However, of course, there's also, you need to take into consideration if you're going to have the snake for, the enjoyment of having a snake like I am now, or if you want it for a display kind of piece. There's nothing wrong with that, it's a pet that doesn't really crave handling anyway, so if you want to set up a beautiful cage for it that looks a really good centerpiece in your home, then, by all means do that. You probably won't want to use newspaper if that's the case, because it doesn't look too great, but the substrate itself, if you have one snake, not that expensive. I used to use substrate on all of my guys, and there's like, how many have we got now? There's 11 in this room, and the carpet was just covered in substrate all the time. You change a water bowl and you get like 20 odd pieces stuck into the carpet. You have to hoover them up straight away. It was a nightmare. But if you have lino floor or anything like that, then you're fine with substrate. Or if you just like cleaning. Some people are a bit weird like that. I'm probably not the best spokesperson for snakes, because people always say I look like a snake person, whatever that means, but I'm trying to give a very neutral, impartial view of these creatures. They are absolutely phenomenal, and they make great pets for anyone. You say hello, Diablo. They're so strong as well. Absolutely gorgeous. Now, another good point that I have that I've written down here is the community aspect. Personally, I was a bit of a shut-in before I got my snakes. I was a big gamer. Used to spend no time talking to anybody really. But you know, the community around keeping snakes is fantastic. I've made so many friends through just, you know, asking about snakes and talking about snakes. And we have lots of snake shows in the UK where, you know, you can meet up with other keepers and, you know, discuss and talk and share, and it's a phenomenal hobby to get into. It really is amazing. Everybody is so friendly in the hobby. It's crazy. You might not want to go up to them because they're generally big, covered in tattoos with beards, and they look a bit scary, but they're all phenomenal and lovely people. What else is on the wonderful little Bible down here? Vet bills, yeah, vet bills. That's a good one to go into, because at the moment, as I speak, I have a snake up here who is currently undergoing vet treatment. Now, I've been keeping snakes for 2 years, which isn't that long, but I have been keeping like 16 snakes for 2 years, which kind of equals out. And I've had to go to the vets once, so you know, it's not too bad in terms of vet bills. But obviously, if you can't afford the vet bills, probably not best that you get any pet. You can obviously get insurance on them. It's relatively cheap for reptiles because they are so hardy. They don't really take damage. And a lot of the problems that snakes will get can be self-treated. They're very easy things to treat. Pretty much, if it's not internal, you can probably treat it yourself. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend doing it if you don't know what you're doing, but there's lots of places to get advice on how you can help your snake help itself, basically. Oh, I'm running out of air doing this. I speak too fast. Thank you for that. Kissing me on the lips. What else we got? Smell. Okay, they don't smell. If they smell, they'd be rubbish ambush hunters, because every mammal with a sense of smell would know where they are. The only thing you can smell is the substrate, if you use any. Kind of smells like wood, obviously, because it is. Or obviously, if they've gone to the toilet, then that can smell, obviously, as it generally does. In which case, you know, you want it to smell, so you know it's there, so you can clean it up and get on with what you're doing. Space, we've already kind of gone over that. You can keep a lovely big Viv. It looks amazing. I'd recommend most people to do that. But if you just want a snake for the sake of having one and for, you know, being able to handle it and show it off and all the marvellous things we do with snakes, then you can keep them in these, which are very easy to keep. They're basically storage boxes. I'm not going to go over how you set them up or anything like that, because this is just saying you should get a pet or you shouldn't get a pet. This isn't explaining how to go about it. I have videos that will explain how to set up things like this. So if you're interested in that, search Kelfezond into YouTube. That's the alias I go under. What else do we have? Electricity bills. A lot of people think, because obviously all snakes need heating, a lot of people think it costs an arm and a leg. Personally, I've never really looked into how much it's costing. I'm in a puzzle here. I've never really noticed it to be overly expensive to keep snakes, but then saying that, I do have an awful lot of them. And the two I have downstairs are very big, so they have huge, great bulbs, which obviously will run a lot of electricity. Although I have a friend who used one of those electricity meter things to measure how much it was costing him, and I think he said it was about £2.50 every 4 days to keep 16 snakes. So if you average that out to just one little heat mat or one light, then it's pretty much nothing. So no need to worry about that. What else is down here? Okay, that one just says ignorance, which obviously I don't want to call you people ignorant if anybody's watching this, but there is a lot of bad press around snakes. A lot of people think that they're nasty, that they're dangerous, you know, that they have poison or venom, which, you know, obviously most snakes, especially if you're getting a pet, doesn't have venom. These guys especially don't. These are royal pythons. I'd recommend anybody to get one of these. These are the absolute king of starter snakes. Or one of them anyway. That's what I've started with. That's what I love. Salmonella. A lot of people say, you know, especially I noticed the APA have been campaigning again about saying salmonella is, you know, in our reptiles and it's going to kill us all. As far as I know, only 2 people have ever been inflicted by salmonella from reptiles in like the history of ever. And personally, I don't think that is from the reptiles. If it is, then to be perfectly fair, you should probably be washing your hands after you handle them anyway. I've been bitten, like I say, hundreds of times, never had an infection, never had anything like that, no salmonella, nothing bad has ever come from that, so I'm not going to say obviously no, they absolutely don't, because there's a hell of a lot of people saying they do, but from what I've heard and from what I've seen, from what I've researched, which is quite a lot, I deal with these guys every day, and snakes are my world at the moment. Never really seen anybody who's even slightly encountered salmonella in them. Size is a good one. Everybody who doesn't know about snakes, as soon as they hear someone's got a snake, it's, oh, aren't you worried it'll eat you one day? What are you going to do when it gets 16 foot? They don't all get that big. This guy doesn't. This guy's almost fully grown himself, and whilst he is a fair size, it's really, he's not big enough to harm anybody, unless you're a rat, and then he probably could harm you. This guy's royal python, as I said, marvellous size. They do get, some of them get a lot bigger than this. When I say a lot, I shouldn't have used that word, that's going to scare everybody. When I say a lot, I mean, chunkier, not so much longer, but still completely harmless. He's absolutely stunning. Look at him. How could anybody not want to keep one of these animals? They're phenomenal. I think that's pretty much it for my little magical piece of paper down there. And I hope that I've convinced anyone who's been watching that you should definitely get a snake. If you've been thinking about it, if you haven't, then you probably shouldn't. As for feeding, I just remembered a lot of people think it's live feeding. We don't really do that in the UK. Most of the time it's defrosted rodents. Very rarely have to live feed anything. So obviously a lot of people wouldn't be able to handle that, which is absolutely fair enough. I've only had to do it once with one snake, and that wasn't very nice to do, but most of it's defrost, which is great. Very easy to do, anyone can do that, children manage it fine. Never any real danger when you're feeding them. How long have we been running, love?
17 minutes.
17 minutes. That's a huge video, Diablo. Okay, well I'll tie it up here now. So thanks for watching. Good luck, Nate. Keep me updated. If you have a girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, anyone who is basically moaning that you shouldn't get a snake, show them this video. Let them know how cool they are. And that's pretty much it from me. So thanks for watching, guys. See you later. Say goodbye, Diablo.